Imagine standing on a cold Nordic shore at dawn. The air smells like salt, pine, and smoke. Waves roll against the pebbles, and somewhere behind the fog, you hear the echo of hammering. Silver being weighed, chopped, and traded. I think Vikings were just raiders with axes and longships. But here, as the truth, they were also makers, entrepreneurs, and masters of an early global economy built not on gold, but on silver. The Viking Age wasn't just about plunder, it was about profit. And silver, those tiny, shining bits of metal, became the fuel that powered a vast network stretching from Baghdad to Dublin. This is the story of how the Vikings built a financial system long before banks, credit cards, or crypto, and how silver turned them from seafaring barbarians into economic architects of medieval Europe. Let us rewind. Around the year 800, Scandinavia was basically the edge of the known world. Forests, fjords, and small farming communities. No kings, no coins, no cities. Most trade was done through barter, cow for some grain, or furs for iron. But then, contact with the outside world exploded. The Franks to the south had coins and Christianity. The English had monasteries full of treasure. And to the east, the Islamic Caliphate, a massive empire with cities, markets, and a flood of silver dirhams from its mines in Persia and Central Asia. That's where our story really begins. You see, silver was more than shiny metal. In the early Middle Ages, it was the currency of trust. People didn't have paper money, and coins weren't standard everywhere. But silver, pure, divisible, and portable, was accepted by almost anyone. Anywhere. The Vikings quickly realized, why just take silver when you can build an economy around it? The first step in this transformation was trade, and raids. Both were often the same thing. A Viking ship could land on your coast to trade furs, or to burn your town, depending on how negotiations went. Either way, they left with silver between the 8th and 10th centuries. The Vikings brought home enormous quantities of silver coins, many of them Arabic dirhams. Archaeologists have found Viking hoards containing tens of thousands of these coins buried in Scandinavia. Some even still show the Arabic inscriptions. There is no God but God. Imagine a bearded Norseman using a Muslim coin to buy a cow in Sweden. That is globalization, year 900 style. And here is the twist. The Vikings didn't really use these coins as money in the modern sense. They didn't care whose face was on it or what it said. They cared about weight. Coins were often chopped into pieces, tested with knives, and weighed on small portable scales. This was the so-called bullion economy. Silver by the gram, not by the mint. You might call it the original metal-based crypto. There was no central authority, no back, just trust in the metal itself. Value was transparent, verifiable, and decentralized. Sound familiar? By around 850, the Viking world was buzzing with silver. Silver from raids in England, silver from trade with the Franks, silver from the east through the great rivers of Russia. And at the heart of it all was a city that barely anyone had heard of before the Vikings. A small settlement on the Baltic Sea, Birka, in what is now Sweden. Birka became one of the first true commercial hubs in the north. Picture a wooden harbour full of merchants, speaking dozens of languages, with ships arriving from all over. Slavic traders bringing furs, Arabs bringing coins, Franks bringing wine and weapons. The Vikings were quick learners. They copied the best practices from everyone they met. From the Franks, they learned about weighing systems. From the Arabs, about purity testing. From the Slavs, about large-scale trade routes. In a few generations, they went from local farmers to international traders. But let us talk about those trade routes, because this part is mined. Blowing while some Viking ships sailed west to plunder England, others went east, deep into what is now Russia and Ukraine. They followed the great rivers, the Dvina, the Dnieper, the Volga long before Moscow existed. Viking merchants, called Varangians, were rowing thousands of kilometers inland, connecting the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea and even the Caspian. They built trading posts along the way, Novgorod, Storaya, Ladoga, Kiev. These weren't tiny camps, they were bustling proto-cities. And what were they trading? Furs, amber, slaves, and yes, silver, lots and lots of silver. From the Muslim world, caravans brought dirhams, freshly minted, high-purity coins. The Vikings traded goods for them, melted them, and brought them home. By the 10th century, literally tons of Islamic silver were flowing into Scandinavia. That influx of silver changed everything. It reshaped social structures, boosted trade, and gave rise to a new class of wealthy chieftains. Men who could finance expeditions, build ships, and reward loyalty with silver arm rings. Those arm rings weren't just jewelry, they were wearable wallets. Warriors were often paid in them. Need to buy something? Just cut off a chunk and weigh it. But here's the genius of it. Silver unified the Viking world. It created a shared economic language across thousands of miles. Whether you were in Dublin, York, or Kiev, a chunk of silver weighed the same. It had no borders, no king, space, no political baggage. Just value. Compare that to medieval Europe, where every small ruler minted their own coins and constantly devalued them. The Vikings, without even realizing it, built one of the most efficient, decentralized economies of the early Middle Ages, and this silver network didn't just make the Vikings rich, it connected cultures. Imagine the cross-cultural mashup. A Viking trader in Kiev wearing Arabic coins on his neck, bargaining with a Persian merchant while Slavic middlemen translate. It sets the Silk Road of the North, powered by silver and daring. Now, not all silver was earned fairly. Let's be honest. A lot of it came from raiding. When the Vikings hit Lindisfarne in 793, they weren't just looking for spiritual enlightenment. They were looking for loot. And monasteries were basically banks without guards. By the 9th century, the English kings started to realize they could buy peace instead of fighting endless wars. Enter the Danegeld, literally Dane money. The English paid off Viking armies with massive silver tributes just to make them go away. It worked, kind of, in one famous case. King Thelred, the unready, paid 10,000 pounds of silver to a Viking army. That's over 3 metric tons of silver. Imagine being the poor official whose job was to count it all. Of course, the Vikings didn't stop raiding. They just treated it like business. Why steal when you can negotiate a profitable peace deal? By around the year 1000, the silver economy was so entrenched that entire kingdoms were running on it. Coins began to reappear in Scandinavia, now minted locally using the imported silver. The first Scandinavian coins bore crosses and Christian motifs, signaling that the Viking world was entering a new phase. Not just raiders or traders anymore, but rulers. The conversion to Christianity was only a religious shift. It was an economic one. Christianity came with writing, contracts, taxes, and a money-based economy. Suddenly, silver wasn't just weighed, it was counted. You can think of it as the Viking version of moving from crypto wallets to regulated banks. Less freedom, maybe, but more structure. Still, silver wasn't infinite. Around the late 10th century, something strange happened. The flow of Arabic coins stopped. The silver mines of the Abbasid Caliphate declined, and the once steady river of dirhams dried up. Archaeologists can see this clearly. Viking hoards from around 970 to 1000 suddenly contain fewer Eastern coins. It's like watching a liquidity crisis in real time. Without fresh silver, the Viking economy started to strain. Arm rings lost value. Trade slow. Some historians even think this contributed to the decline of Viking dominance in the 11th century, when the silver stopped flowing. So did their influence. But their legacy remained, and it is far richer than any treasure hoard. The Vikings didn't just build ships, they built networks. They showed that wealth could come from mobility, from connectivity, from understanding what others value. Lessons that echo eerily in our own globalized world today. When you buy something online from across the planet, or trade digital tokens that exist nowhere and everywhere at once, you're reparticipating in a system not so different from the one that started in a smoky Viking hall 1,000 years ago, a system based on trust, trade, and shared value. So next time someone says Vikings were just barbarians, tell them this: they ran an international economy before anyone else in medieval Europe. They mastered decentralized finance long before the blockchain. And their silver didn't just fundraise. It built bridges between worlds, and maybe that's the real secret of the Viking Age. It wasn't won with axes, but with silver. The axe opened the door, but silver kept it open. So, the next time you imagine a Viking raising his sword under a crimson sky, remember, next to that sword was a small set of scales, and a bag of silver that changed history.